Thank you for being here. So my question is related to small business as well. And many of the larger corporations, big business these days are in our community, start small. So at what point does a small business become a big business and the bad guy?
Yes, John.
All right. It's an interesting question. I think that small businesses in particular are really what make neighborhoods destinations. They're what make communities thrive. And I would say that there is a tipping point, right? When a small business does become a large business. I mean, we've seen Amazon go from startup to now one of the largest corporations in the world. And I think for me the question is, if a business is so large that it's now taxing our infrastructure, it's now having an impact on our housing market. That's the point where it's reasonable to say to them, you should be paying your fair share. So,
But how large is that? How many employees? How much revenue?
Yeah, well, I don't have any specifics for you, but I can tell you one specific. We have put forward a proposal to end unsheltered homelessness in the next 5 years by building 5,000 units of homeless housing. And the way that we would like to fund it is by raising the tax exemption on small businesses for the B&O tax from $100,000 to $1 million. That would cover about 2/3 of all businesses in Seattle, and then increase the B&O tax between 16 and 30 cents for other large businesses above that exemption. That would bring in about $160 million a year, and then we could truly have the resources at a local level to do something significant to end unsheltered homelessness in our city.
So you think a business over $1 million in revenue is a big business?
I think for the purposes of this proposal, if we want to do something meaningful to address affordable housing, that would be the approach that I would recommend.
Teresa.
So the question was, at what point do they become the bad guy? And I think my answer is, they don't become the bad guy. We have to work with everyone in the city to make sure that this is a place where everyone can afford to live and a place where everyone can actually afford to create their own business. The folks who are living in the city want to be able to work here. The businesses that are here want their community to be able to afford to live here and not commute in very long distances. I think we all want to have an infrastructure that works, sidewalks, streets, hopefully trees, light rail that's functioning, transit that works. And I think the conversations that I hear from our business community and folks who are workers and community advocates is we have to figure out what Seattle looks like, the city of the future, we can all exist together. I have to say that when John says that he has no specifics, that's really critical because in every other forum he's talking about taxing corporations, taxing businesses. Now what I think is critical is that we bring folks to the table to say, I want to make sure that people have good living wage jobs, that people are respected in their workplace, that we protect folks from retaliation and wage theft, and that we can do that in a way that lifts up good businesses and hopefully calls out unscrupulous businesses that are actually driving wages down in certain industries, because that doesn't help anybody in the business community. So when I talk about what's good for workers, I'm really conscious that what I'm talking about as well needs to be good for businesses. What's good for workers is good for businesses if we do it the right way. And very quickly on that, my family owns restaurants in Des Moines, Iowa. About 60 years ago, my grandparents were very poor, and they saw that Bing Crosby's sons were opening up his own taco restaurants in California. We're gonna do it. And they opened up their first taco shop, which was really a hole in the wall. And 60 years later, in one of the most difficult industries that we know of to be successful, they now have 7 Mexican restaurants. They're called Tasty Tacos in Des Moines, Iowa, in case you're ever there. And it really helped to bring my family out of poverty. And to your point, I wouldn't call them a big business, but they've been able to do all of these things on your list. They give back to the community. They invest in philanthropy. They have programs that help make sure that folks who are Latino, Chicano, Mexican-American, that they have the opportunity to go on to college. And many of the folks who've worked there have worked there for over 30 years. So I think we have to be really careful not to cast aspersions, not to point fingers, and make sure that we work with everyone. And I want to hold folks accountable, don't get me wrong, but this will be an opportunity for us to actually create a Seattle that works together.
So the SBA considers a big business, or you move from a small business designation to a larger business designation at 500 employees. But as somebody who's out there working with clients across the city and the region and in a variety of industries, I notice a shift at about 150 employees. But that doesn't necessarily make somebody a bad guy. Many of the clients that I work with are very good to their employees. And I think that's what we need to be judging people on. Is the money staying up at the top and nothing trickling down to the employees? Is the money staying up at the top and no contribution to the community that supports that business? So that's what I would judge a business by, is whether or not they're engaged in the community, they make an investment in the community, and that they share in the profits with their employees.